Morning.
This is Kevin Purcell with the Theotek Podcast, and we're just getting kicked off here at our regular time every Friday morning at 9 o'clock. And this morning we have a special guest with us, one of my friends, Ricky Rodriguez from Baumhaus Recording Studios. He's also a real fan of the Apple ecosystem, and since this morning we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Apple, I invited him to join, and then he just jumped in, and I didn't even get a chance to tell my two co-hosts that Ricky would be with us today. And so let me just quick introduce my two co-hosts that are regularly with us. Wes Allen.
How you doing?
Hi, Wes.
Hello. I thought Ricky was just a random viewer that jumped on the Hangout somehow. That was awesome.
And then we have two Ricks. One is Rick, and the other one's Ricky. Rick Mansfield of Accordance Bible Software, and he's always with us. Good to see you again today, Rick.
Yeah, good morning. Well, it'll be confusing between Rick and Ricky this morning.
That's
and I'm
right.
sure we're both actually Richards, too, so who knows?
Well, Ricky, are you actually a Richard?
No, I'm a Ricky.
Okay. Well, as the whole tech world knows, this week Apple was unveiling all of their cool toys and new goodies, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. I do, however, want to mention some big Bible software news. I think we talked about this on air a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, that we believed there would be a word search update. If we didn't talk about it on air, I know we talked about it, just the two or three of us, but Word Search Bible Software dropped version 11, and we're excited that next week we're going to start a half an hour late at 9:30 because we have Rick Barnes, I believe his name is, from Word Search. He's going to come and talk about what's new in the program. I've been a Word Search user for a long time. I've got a pretty large library. Public disclosure, a good portion of it was given to me by Word Search, so if that thing makes you think that it colors my view of it, it's not my number one go-to for Bible software, but it is often my number two or number three, depending on what books I'm opening. I've got a lot of stuff that's the only place I've got it is in Word Search. And I actually have downloaded and installed it on my Mac. They have a Mac version that is really just running in emulation. And then I haven't even installed the Windows version because I haven't had time this week to even sit down at a Windows computer in the last 3 days. I believe this came out on Wednesday was when it finally dropped. Am I right about that, Rick?
That is correct. Yeah, it was Wednesday because we were in Slack discussing the Apple event when it was released.
That's right. It was right in the middle of it. And I had hoped that LaRosa would be joining us today. He said he would try to do so. I know that LaRosa Johnson, one of our former regulars and often a repeat guest with us, he used to work for Word Search, and he actually downloaded it that day and installed it. So I was hoping he'd get to join us today and talk a little bit about it. But anyway, we're not going to spend a lot of time on that since next week's show will be the whole week. But if you want to get a copy of the update, for a short period of time it's going to be $40, and then they're going to jump to $50, I believe, thereafter. But it has a very new look to it. I'll just quickly share my screen with you. It's still installing goodies, as you can see down here, the indexing portion of the screen. So things are still not quite fully functional because of that, and so I can't really show you much of anything. In fact, it's acting like.
How long's it been indexing for?
Just a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in indexing step 4 or 5, so it doesn't take that long usually to index it. When you first install it, it takes a little while, and then after that, if it indexes, it takes maybe 5 minutes at the most. So, anyway, so we're gonna drop that and move on to something that my two co-hosts have been so absolutely excited and joyful over all the Mac news this morning. I haven't even been able to get a word in our pre-show discussion.
Joyful is the word for it.
Oh, you guys are joyful. You two are more pumped up than I've ever seen you on a podcast.
Well, we're animated, but I think we were being more critical than anything, right, Rick?
Yeah, I think so. Technically, there was no Mac news.
Yes.
Technically.
Technically, there's no Mac news. You're right. Technically, since it's all about Apple and iPad and iPhone. So let's get started off. The way we're going to kind of do this, instead of just going rundown, boring, here's what they announced first, what do you think? We actually sort of want to organize this by asking you the question, guys, and we'll let everybody have a chance. Number one, what's the most exciting announcement that Apple made? Just to let people know, in case you live under a rock and didn't hear, Apple announced on Wednesday their fall announcement, which included a new iPad Pro, brand new iPhone 6s and 6s Pro. They announced or re-announced the Watch OS 2.0 update. Let's see, what am I missing? Oh, Apple TV. That was the other interesting new news. So let's start with our guest, Ricky Rodriguez. Go ahead and tell us, what was your most exciting update? What was the one detail that was the most exciting to you in the news Wednesday?
That iPad Pro looks amazing.
Okay, how so? What's so cool that you think?
Well,
explain what it is first.
Well, let me pull up the specs here, but I think, what's the screen? 12.9 inches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That for what I would need it for what I use my iPad for, which is essentially a laptop replacement. It's going to be perfect for me. I do a lot of traveling and on-site recording, so I usually bring Mac Pros to do the heavy lifting, and I use my iPads to monitor my recording software, and just to have that real estate to do what I need to do is just mind-blowing. There's a lot of other cool features. I see them using that extra dock port they added, whatever, I don't know what they're calling it. But, I think the future with that machine is unbelievable.
Okay, guys, what do you think of the iPad Pro? Start with you, Rick.
Yeah, I would also have to say that was probably the most significant announcement they made, and I went back and watched the presentation, and I wrote down this quotation from Tim Cook where he said, "iPad is the clearest expression of our vision of the future of personal computing," and that's not new, but it was a very explicit statement, and to me this is probably like their phase 2, and it was very significant. I thought, not just the device itself, because that's going to take the capabilities to a new level, but also that they had Microsoft on stage. I can't remember the last keynote that
was
Microsoft.
Insane.
Yeah, Microsoft used to come out and show off each new version of Office.
Right.
Until Apple came out with iWork and they started emphasizing that, and then you didn't see Microsoft anymore. For Microsoft to come out there and show that they're supporting this with the pen input, which is exactly what one of the drawing points of the Surface is. That says a lot. That says a lot not only about the potential for this device, but it also says a lot about the new Microsoft, which is it's going back to the days where they're just concerned about being on every platform. They don't seem to be as concerned about dominating the world like they once were.
They see themselves as a service company now that makes hardware. So it's rather interesting to see the transformation of Microsoft that way.
Yeah, I think that the iPad Pro, it's interesting and it's exciting as an aspirational device for most people, for professional artists or someone like you, Ricky, who would have a professional use case of it. But for most of us, I don't know. Is anybody here besides Ricky? You've already said you want to get one. Rick, Wes, do either of you plan to go out and buy one?
No, because what I need a laptop replacement for, I just can't do on the iPad Pro.
Okay.
My iPad, I use it.
I haven't decided yet. I would be tempted to. I think that probably either the 9-inch or the 8-inch or whatever they are, the two traditional iPads will probably still outsell this iPad Pro, I would guess. We'll kind of wait and see. But I'm tempted. I've said before that if I could do everything on the iPad, I would, because I like the form factor. When I carry my laptop, which is what I'm talking to you on this, I have to carry that in in a bag. You know, I've got a bag down here at my feet. When I'm just using the iPad, I can just carry that in my hand, and I really like that aspect of it. I like that portability aspect of it. And as the operating system matures, as iOS matures, it's going to become more capable. And so if there's a day where it could eclipse what I need a laptop for, I would be fine with that. I don't think that day's completely here yet. But you know, I'd be interested to put my toe in the water. But it's expensive. You know, that's the biggest thing. It's not as high as I think as what some of us thought it might be, but it's still by the time you purchase that iPad and a keyboard and a stylus. I mean, it's the same with the Microsoft Surface or Surface Pro. These are premium devices.
Yeah, it's putting it into the realm of a Surface Pro. And my son just got a Surface 3, and he loves it, and I can't stand it because I can't stand Windows. But and I do think, you know, as nice as Windows 10 is, it's still a schizophrenic operating system. Like, it cannot decide what on earth it wants to be.
Amen.
The iPad is great because it's just got this. It knows exactly what it wants to be, but then you throw it into the Pro mode, and the hardware is now schizophrenic. It doesn't know what it wants to be, and yet it still has this very single-minded operating system. And we were talking before the show went on, and this is why, Kevin, I think we're not really celebrating. We were being critical. I can't do with an iPad Pro what I can do with my Mac. I can't, you know, take gobs of video and put it on an external drive and have, you know, 3 dozen projects running at one time. Since that's one of the things that I do on my Mac that's very specific, you know, the iPad Pro is just right out for me. As gorgeous as it looks, and as much as I love my 9.7-inch iPad, which I use primarily as a writing tool, it's not that's not there for me yet. They may figure it out, but this first iteration is just not. It's not there for me. I think they're going to sell. Obviously, they're going to sell gobs of them.
I have some pretty strong thoughts on this. I think you got to look at it 2 ways. I have a high school student. My daughter's a high school student, and when I saw this device, I instantly thought of her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she's having, you know, right now she's using Pages on a MacBook Air that's about 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gradually over the last couple of years moved our family into the cloud, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and we're pretty much in that world between Dropbox and iCloud now. Pretty much. Professionally, I use Dropbox. And I think the way you can split it up is professionally. I'm in my studio right now. My Mac Pro is running. I'm editing vocals right now as we're doing this podcast. You know, multitasking. But when I'm done with this for the day, like when I'm done today at 5 p.m., 6 p.m., whatever day I'm done, I'm a huge gamer. I love playing a game called Destiny, and I get my iPad. I take it from my studio. I take it to my house, which is right next door.
Yeah.
And it's my second screen for my PS4. You know. Yeah.
And I totally understand that.
It's become like it's almost become like it's a totally different vibe for me. You know, it's from professional to casual, I guess, is where the iPad is starting to fit. And I'm not going to spend. I mean, I love that MacBook. It's so sexy, the new one. But I'm not going to spend that money when I can get the iPad Pro, and it will do more than what I need.
Yeah, that's what I have.
And that 12.9-inch, like that size, I love the fact they didn't go 13. I don't know why, but
it's unlucky.
I had an old MacBook. What was it? I don't even know. I don't even remember what they called them, but it was one of the old G4s, and it was a 12-inch.
Uh-huh.
And to this day, I still miss that laptop. Like, I loved it. I loved that size. You know, so I'm sort of happy they stayed with that 12-inch. But back to what I was saying, I think professionally, I can see the limitations. But if you're in the cloud, which is obviously the future, I think, you know, I think you can make a case that you could do everything with that. You just have to think about
it's still not there for video editing.
Yeah.
Can you imagine pulling down an hour recording of 4K video and trying to cut down an interview in whatever Final Cut or anything goes. It's just not there yet. So for what I need, that iPad Pro is not where I am. If I was just doing writing, and I wanted like a huge screen, especially when Scrivener finally comes out with their iOS version, which maybe will be never at this point, that's like amazing. To me, that's the type of thing that's really cool. I can do almost full layouts in Adobe's kind of light iPad version for InDesign just by drawing shapes on a screen. On a 12.9-inch screen, that would actually be really cool because then I could do side-by-side layouts and things. But I don't do enough of that in my iPad realm that I want to spend another $400 to get the bigger screen.
Do you think the iPad will ever just replace a laptop? I just don't see that. I
do from Apple's perspective. I think that's the direction they're going.
I think iPad
I think within 5 years they'll phase out the Mac, and they'll say if you need a truck, use Windows, because I think their direction is clear of where they're going. And we were talking about earlier, they continued to sell the Apple II for 8 years after the Mac was released, because when the Mac was first released, the Apple II was still more capable. It's just that the Mac was easier to use. And so, it will take time, but I think that's their direction. But I've said for a long time that the iPad or other tablets, is really all the computer that a lot of people need.
Oh, heck yeah.
And so if you think of think of this iPad Pro in the business realm, most businesses they need things like something like Office. And they usually have a specialized app. My dad works for a company where they have a specialized app for their company, and they use iPads. And for business, that's usually about all they need. Email, some Office-type apps, and a specialized application for that business.
Yep.
And you're going to be able to do all of that, especially on an iPad Pro. I think it becomes more capable.
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. But I do think, Rick, where I disagree with you is I think they're never going to say if you need a truck, go get a Windows machine. I think they're going to come out and they're going to be the way Apple. If they do that, I think they're really screwing up. The way Apple typically has processed is going, here, we're going to redefine the nature of a truck.
Yeah.
And so I think that's more what they're going to do. And I think that's with Final Cut Pro 10. And that's kind and Aperture and the whole not Aperture Motion and all that stuff. I think eventually you're going to see those apps brought over to the iPad Pro. It's just they have to figure out a way to handle the data storage.
Guys, let's move on from this. One further evidence of that would, in my opinion, disagree with what Rick is saying is that the MacBooks are outselling Windows PCs and increasingly grabbing market share. And so I doubt that Apple's going to throw that money away anytime soon. But let's move on to Wes. What was your favorite part of the Apple announcement?
I think I'd have to agree with Antoine, although he didn't write it up in his little blurb. I think it's Apple's divorce of buying an iPhone from a carrier.
Oh yeah, that's big news. Yeah.
I think if you want the most exciting, it's not the sexiest thing that they did, but the most exciting and what's going to have the greatest reverberation throughout all of the mobile communications world, that's it. Yeah, because Google's now looking at...
Let's explain what that is first, just in case people watching didn't see what that was. Rick, why don't you take a stab at that? What is Wes talking about there, from the carrier?
What they've done is you can now buy... You've always been able to buy your iPhone from Apple, but you either had to be in one of the carrier contracts or you had to buy it outright. Now you're going to be able to make payments straight to Apple, and there's value added in that it also comes with Apple Care, and you can replace your phone once a year instead of, traditionally we've been in these contracts where you replace them 2 years. But the significance of it is that you're not going to be tied to a contract. You're going to be you're not going to be even T-Mobile says, okay, we've done away with contracts, and Verizon follows suit. You still are stuck with T-Mobile or Verizon because you're paying off that phone. Now this is going to be completely separate, and you're going to be able to go, if one company comes out with a better plan, you're going to be able to switch to that other company as you want to, and you're going to be able to get another phone, and you're going to have Apple Care, and to me they've broken those chains. And keep your phone number. Yeah.
It's amazing. I can't do it quite yet because my wife and I don't make enough to be able to pay for 4 phones, for the rest of in perpetuity. But man, I'm looking forward to being able to do that.
Yeah.
Putting this in context, Sprint came out with their program where, they'll always sell you an iPhone, you pay them monthly, but their price was higher than Apple's, which is interesting that Apple's trying to undercut by price. They normally don't care about undercutting.
I think T-Mobile.
And then AT&T has their next program, Verizon. I don't know what Verizon's is called, and all of these companies now. And then T-Mobile just announced that they're going to do theirs, and they're going to do it cheaper than Apple. And so, what the beautiful thing about this, and this is what's, I think, while it isn't sexy as you said, Wes, it's disruptive, and that is Apple is sort of throwing a shot over the bow, saying, "Look, you guys need to straighten up, or we're coming after you."
Well, and look at what Apple has going for it. It doesn't have the fragmentation issues of Android. It doesn't have the update issues of Android, to where you still have these majority of Android devices that are out there right now that still can be compromised by a malicious text message that you don't even open.
That's overblown. That's not really that significant anymore.
But it's still, it's part of the problem of the Android ecosystem. So Apple's going, we control the phone, you're going to get your updates, you're free from a carrier, and everybody hates their mobile carrier.
Yeah.
What they just did, Samsung is now probably looking at Apple going, oh crud. And if you don't think that the Android manufacturers are going to quickly follow suit within the next year or two,
they will.
It's great. And then, the second thing is the Apple TV, because they're getting ready to just completely screw over cable. It's just like oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Now, there is one downside, of course, to doing this through Apple, is that if you get in this program, you turn your phone back in at the end of the year when you trade it.
That's why I can't do it right now.
It's like a lease program, But what I've always done is I've always taken my phone and I've sold it to offset the cost of getting that new phone anyway, and but you end up paying kind of the same per month anyway. And for the last couple of phones, I've always gotten Apple Care, because you drop the things eventually, and it's just cheaper to get it repaired if you have Apple Care. So that's built in. That's probably the more economical way to do it.
And I can't see, that's my thing, is I can't hand the phone off to my kid. So that's that's the reason why I can't do it. I never sold the phones, but I always pass them down.
There are hidden costs. There are hidden costs. This is the program for people like us, though, usually, who they always want the new thing, and Apple fans are historically that way. Now, most people, Apple does the TikTok update where they do the iPhone number X and then the iPhone number XS, where they've been doing that the last few generations. And so now people can upgrade both, which, in my opinion, could also have a negative effect on Apple, and that is it'll make their sales numbers stay high even if they're not innovating like they were. And you got to be honest and say that this iPhone 6S is really an incremental update, more so than probably any of the talk updates have been. Because really, what do you get?
I agree.
Slightly better processor, and that Force Touch, which in my opinion is not that
but
useful.
This is not new for them, though. The S phones, I've been on the 5 cycle, 6 cycle.
Right.
I'm not on the S cycle.
See, I'm on the S cycle.
And there's not been one S phone that I've seen that I thought, oh, I'll go get that. Like I saw 4K video, great.
Yeah, but this one's less than the last couple of S generations.
And I got to tell you, I'm going to be upgrading at the end of this year as soon as I pay off my phone. And this is the first one where I went, maybe I'll just go get a 6 Plus, and not the 6 Plus.
I love my 6 Plus, man.
This is the first one where I looked at it. It's like, yeah, there's just not enough there that I really feel like I have to get the S version this time.
Well, Rick, let's jump to you. What was the most exciting update bit of news that you saw Wednesday?
Well, it would be the iPad Pro, but we may have covered that completely. So, I could always move to and say maybe the second most exciting thing would be the Apple TV, because I am an Apple TV user, I realized that the Apple TV has really been behind some of its competitors the last 2 or 3 years. And my theory on that is, if you remember the Steve Jobs interview where he said that they cracked TV, I think that they were originally planning a completely different product. I think that they were going to sell a real TV at some point. Maybe they were trying to be first to market with a 4K screen or something like that. I think one of the biggest hurdles that they've run into is getting the networks to bail on cable and let them go in with a package deal, which I think was part of this too, and I think that's still going to come to this new one. And so I think it let the current Apple TV kind of languish for 2, 3, 4 years. I think this current one hasn't been updated since maybe 2011 or 12. I don't remember.
A long time.
It's got an A5 processor that the current one does, and so this new one is a big deal. But we were talking about this the other day. The reason I use mine is, I decided a while back that because I like to purchase certain movies and I want to keep them, and I was trying to think ahead of, well, which company would I have the best chance, probably, because it's always a gamble, of still being able to see those movies 20 years from now, 30 years from now. And with Apple having $100+ billion in the bank, I feel like they're going to be around a while, and so I put my, I went in that direction, and so we use it multiple times during the week. Kathy and I even used it last night. She wanted to show me something on her computer. Rather than hand me her computer, we just used AirPlay and put that up on the screen because we're both in the living room, and we just use it for that kind of stuff all the time. So I'm really excited to see. To me, it's not. I still say the iPad Pro is more exciting than the Apple TV, but just to kind of move in that direction. The Apple TV with its capabilities, I think it's mostly catch up to its competitors, but I'm glad to see it finally catch up.
I'm interested to see how
if you want a TV, in my opinion, that's far superior even to what this new one is going to be, and that is the NVIDIA Shield. Now, again, it's Android-based, so people who are in the iOS ecosystem, you're not going to be interested. But if all you're interested in is an excellent set-top box that plays video games, the NVIDIA Shield TV is a far better gaming system. It also has future-proof because it supports 4K video. It has a controller that was designed by NVIDIA instead of relying on a third-party controller, which is what Apple is going to do with this Nimbus Steel series. I wonder if that Nimbus is a nod to Harry Potter. Anybody?
Oh yeah.
Thought about that? Anyway, Nimbus is the company that's going to make that. I think the Fire TV is better. Now I've got Apple TVs. I've owned every generation except for the very first generation, which I think very few people owned. And so I loved the Apple TV, but again, like you said, it languished, and so I started moving on, and thankfully I did. But this is it is a nice update. I like the remote. I like the Siri function. That was pretty cool. That glass touch area across the top here, this area right here is going to be glass touch, and that's going to feel a lot like when you use your remote app on your iPhone. Which, to be honest with you, it's a little bit tricky to do the sliding from item to item on the menus on the screen, just because the sliding on the glass seems to go faster than it did with the little circle. I still wish it had the circle button so that I could just tap and click to go, because the Shield TV has both. No, it doesn't have touch. You can use your phone to control it, or you can use this. But it is a nice upgrade, and this is what I would have said 2 years ago, that this was the most exciting upgrade. I still think it's just catch up and not enough catch up, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm a little I was underwhelmed when I saw it, because I was really hoping we would have some content like put together for us, because I was reading a lot of reports about that. And
what kind of content do you mean, Ricky?
well, I'm looking at it from a I know they were looking. I'm assuming they're still negotiating with the networks.
Yes.
And I want them to put it all together for us at a decent price and make it simple for me to watch TV easy, through my Apple TV stuff.
I think that's still coming.
I'm waiting on that. Yeah.
That's what I'm waiting for. I mean, we use our Apple TV, and I think mine's the old one, the 720p one, and use it mostly for NFL. That's what I'm watching my highlights on and stuff, and whatever's on we download. But I was a little underwhelmed, and it looks weird. Did you look at it? It just looks weird. Like, look at the box. Like, pull up the design of it. Like, to me, it's not, that's the top view, but it looks a little bricky to me. I don't know. It's sort of odd for an Apple product, in my opinion. But when I saw it, I just thought it looked a little strange to me. It's just thick. See it?
It's because it's thicker than the old one. Is that why you're saying that? Or?
Yeah, I just think it looks weird. Like, I was looking at it, and I was like, I don't know. It didn't strike me as a typical...
Yeah, it didn't show any creativity in the redesign, did it? All it did is it took the puck and it went, let's make it taller. And you're like,
that's basically...
It's not a very Apple thing.
But it's kind of invisible, though. You don't ever look at the device. I mean,
well, yeah, it just goes anywhere.
Kind of, one thing that's interesting there, if you put that screen back up, Kevin, that they didn't talk about at all is the USB-C connection, and they haven't said exactly what that's going to be for. But if you could add external storage to that, that would be awesome.
I think it's for maintenance, right?
Yeah, that's going to be the same.
They haven't really said for certain what it's for. People have speculated that it's going to be for maintenance.
I think it's just going to be what the current micro USB port is. That's, you hook it up to your Mac if you want to throw on,
if it breaks, you need to update a firmware.
Or there's something wrong and you have to, force an update or something like that. I wish that it would add storage. They did say they're going to come with 32 or 64 gigabytes of storage, which is nice. It's still just a 10 by 100 Ethernet port, which is a little disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming it's 802. Yeah, it says 802.11 AC with MIMO, which is good. It's got the latest HDMI output on it, which is nice. Another nice feature, if you're used to the current generation, it's got a Bluetooth remote instead of IR.
That's interesting, but it still has an IR sensor.
Well, I think that's so you can use the old remote probably.
Okay.
If you've got the old remote, probably. But this way you've got the ability to. I tried to buy one of these things that lets you stack it on the back, mount it on the back of your TV. Sadly, the company decided to take my money and never send me the thing.
Oh, that's nice.
So I had to call Amazon and say, "Give me my money back, please." And they did. So that's an interesting feature. But I was underwhelmed too. I was hoping it'd be 4K video. I've got a 4K TV, and there's a lot more 4K content coming, and that way you could buy it now. And yeah, there's not a lot out now, but a year from now, I think we're going 3D failed, but I think 4K is on the way.
Well, they'll just update it like they did when they went from 720 to 1080. But I think part of that, I was looking at. I bought a television back right around Christmas, and I was looking at the 4K sets, but I started reading about them, and at the time they said that the spec wasn't completely finalized. Mm-hmm. And so, and I don't know where it stands today because I just went ahead and got a Sony 1080p, but that could have something to do with it, and they can always come out with that later. But there's not a whole lot of 4K content out there. Of course, you'll be able to record 4K with your new iPhone.
And I'm not even, you know what? I'm still not even sold on. 4K is amazing, but unless you have like a 72-inch television, you're not even going to notice the difference.
Oh, you do. I've got a 55-inch, and it's a big.
Yeah. I was looking at them for Black Friday last year and started doing the research, and I'm pretty much convinced myself this Black Friday, I'm probably going to buy whichever one Best Buy has.
Yeah, maybe it's just my poor eyesight, but
it's pretty.
It was quite a
nice,
difference. We had an old 1080p set in our bedroom that was dying, and that's why I replaced the set. Got a Vizio, the cheapest, bottom of the line, and still it was a significant. Even 1080p content looks better on it.
I think the sign of 4K coming up, for the future. If you look at like Sony and Microsoft with the Xbox and the PS4, my opinion is when they upgrade their current next-gen models, which I'm expecting pretty soon.
Will all be 4K?
I think they'll go 4K.
Yeah, I mean it's coming, but I don't know if it's going to be the rapid push, like say the jump between 720 and 1080.
My opinion, if the consoles go 4K, then everybody's going to jump on. That's what I think.
Yeah, I guess I'm not there.
I've upgraded every TV set based on the new Xbox. I mean, I had to get a new TV for the Xbox 360, and then I had to get with the Xbox One. I had to get and what was funny was, speaking of the Apple TV, was I had a 42-inch television. And the Apple TV that and I got a 60-inch television, and my 720p Apple TV, I could tell the difference. And so I bought that in January, knowing that they were going to update it this year.
Yeah, when we updated our television, we got this smart Vizio that was a smart TV, and my Apple TV got demoted downstairs because it was the old 720. And the only thing that's going to get me to get this new Apple TV is if they go to streaming. That has a nice DVR function to where I can look at Hulu and say, well, okay, well I'm not paying your $9 a month anymore because I'm just going to do this.
I can't wait.
So that's what I cannot wait for that. Like that's just amazing to me. But until that happens, I'm not going to bother shelling out $150 for the new Apple TV unless the AirPlay streaming or AirPlay mirroring and using it as a secondary display is so much better that I'll get it for the office, and we'll use
I haven't thought about that. Has anybody read any?
I'm assuming it's going to be much better.
That would be the only feature that would make me want to buy it if the AirPlay feature was better.
But you mentioned DVR, 32 gigabytes or 64 gigabytes is not going to be enough room to DVR television shows, which again may point to further extended use of that port. Because I mean, I have an external hard drive plugged into my TiVo just to have extra space,
But Rick, I'm not even thinking like traditional DVR. I'm thinking more like on demand.
Yeah.
Well, but for that,
CBS is just. Yeah. There you go. You have all you're buying Apple and there.
Well, that's what you have with the current Apple TV, and it has 8 gigabytes of space in it or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question.
I think we're sort of dreaming though if we think that Apple's going to have to give up an awful lot in order to get the networks to get on board with this stuff. Because first of all, 2 reasons. One, they saw what Apple did to the music industry, and while it sort of saved it, it also has really handcuffed it. By some of their early strong-arm features. Ricky, you may know more about that than I do. The second thing, though, is the networks are run by a bunch of old guys who don't have a clue about distribution. They think I mean, just the fact that there are certain shows, they put the real popular shows on Hulu, but you can only watch it on your computer, where it's fairly easy to pirate it.
Right.
But you can't watch it on your set-top box where it's nearly impossible to pirate it. That just shows they're totally clueless about this stuff.
The NFL is the worst about this.
Baseball has it right. I wish that baseball was worth watching, but baseball has it right.
Yeah, why? Well, no, they don't even know because they still have the stupid blackouts.
Well, but that's gone now.
Yeah, blackouts.
Congress may force them to quit that, so they don't have that anymore.
So next season I'll be able to watch my local team.
You can watch it this season. It's gone already.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought they still were advertising their blackout restrictions apply.
Well, they're not supposed to. Maybe it is wait till next year. I don't know, but I know that they were forced to. Congress basically said, we might need to take a look at this. What do they call it? Their thing that lets them be a
They
monopoly.
they have a antitrust exemption.
Yeah, we might need to look at this antitrust exemption, and suddenly baseball said, maybe we'll think about letting people in the local markets watch it after all.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, let's move on. I want to say, here's my most exciting thing that I saw in the announcement. But the way we were going to organize this discussion, and we've kind of gone a little long on these, so we're not going to do it as much, but is your most exciting, your second, your least exciting or least favorite, and then the thing that you wish that they would have announced. Well, I'm going to do that first one and that third one all in one, and that is this.
Yeah.
I thought this thing looked awesome. Now I'm a stylus guy. You know, I've got my Surface Pro 3.
Yes, you
It has
are.
a beautiful stylus. I just bought the Adonit Jot Dash, which we were talking about, I think last week. That's a great stylus for the iPad. I mean, I used it last night to take notes at an evangelism team meeting for our association, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's still a little clicky. You know, you tap on that screen and people look at you like, what are you doing over there? You know, trying to learn how to play the drums on your iPad or something. But anyway, but this thing looks beautiful, and look how big that is.
I love the fact they refuse to call it a stylus.
Yeah. Anyway, if they show you a stylus, you're doing it wrong. Well, it's a pencil. Anyway, I think this is beautiful. You see the way it's going to have pressure sensitivity, and if you show it at, you know, the angles, and you know, it's a fine tip, so you're going to have really accurate. They said down to the pixel. I don't know how they're doing that with such a high resolution screen, but there you show the pressure sensitivity. It's going to be able to, you know, tell that you're doing it at an angle. So if you're an artist, this will be a beautiful thing.
The lack of
Here's the thing.
latency.
I don't want an iPad Pro. I don't want to take an iPad Pro to a meeting. I want this on an iPad Mini or an iPad, a regular iPad. I want it on my iPhone. And so while it is my favorite, it's also the thing that I wish they had announced. I wish they said, and you'll be able to buy this for this generation's iPad as well.
That will be
Obviously,
next
they
year.
couldn't do that because the technology is not in this generation's iPad. But they could have put it in the phone, but they didn't do that. So that's the thing I'm the least or most disappointed that I didn't see.
I don't think they have an urgency to do it on the phone, just because if you have to carry the stylus around, or the pencil, whatever you want to call it, with the phone, I just think that goes completely against Apple's.
Yeah, but they're already making it, so it's not costing them. They don't have to redesign
Well,
it.
it's not that. Apple just says,
So they
we're
could
not
just
doing it
sell
because
it. They
that's
could
not the
turn
way
it
that we
on,
want you to
and
use it.
Hang on, they could turn it on and sell it to me, you know, because
Right.
the new phone's going to have the pressure-sensitive screen like the iPad Pro, so the technology seems to already be there.
Well, no, the iPad Pro doesn't have a pressure-sensitive screen. That's in the pencil.
I know. That's what I'm saying. The technology's there. Why not sell it and let it work on the phone?
Because they want to
don't
make
want
this
to use it that way.
exclusive to the iPad Pro. Yeah, they're pushing the iPad Pro. They didn't update any of their other iPad line, because even the iPad Mini 4 is basically an iPad Air 2 shrunk down.
And so what's your answer is, it's once more an example of Apple says, you don't need it until we say you need it. So,
Correct.
Well, they're wanting to push this. They're wanting to push the iPad Pro. That they're going to focus everything on this, and then next year probably they'll come, because they do one step at a time. They'll probably come out with it available for the next generation of iPads and iPhones. Although you're exactly right.
That's maddening.
You're exactly right that they could probably make it work on any of them now if they wanted to. My big concern about it is that it doesn't have this clip, you know, like I have on a regular pen that helps me keep from losing it in my pocket.
Well, it'll be sure interesting to see my friend Twan at CleanIt, see if he comes up with one of his little attachments for it. That would be awesome.
That he will.
If he can come up with one of those. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you just go to CleanInt, CLEANINT.com, and they've got one for the iPad. You can put a stylus on it. The really nice one is for the Surface Pro 3 that I said, and I still say, Microsoft should just call them up and say, we're going to include this in every one of our things, and we'll give you some money, and it'd be great to allow him to help support his ministry over in Vietnam even greater. But that was my. Let you guys real quick. We only have about 15 minutes. Wes, what was your least or most disappointing thing that was left out? Anything?
I mean, it was pretty much everything what people expected. I think the thing that was least interesting to me was the watch, but that's just because I'm not a watch person. So it's I have nothing against the watch. I just don't.
That was just really a re-announcement, other than the new color.
Yeah, and I'm okay. I mean, it looks really cool. It is like you said. I think I agree. It's the best smartwatch on the market right now. I just, since I don't have any interest in a watch, I just was like, okay, that's cool.
All right, Ricky.
You know, I'm gonna say, initially I loved the iPad Mini. I had the first 2 generations, but now it's like, meh. Like, I'm not seeing the reason to even get one anymore. And at first I loved it because it was so portable. But after what I watched, it seems like that one's a hair behind everything, you know?
Yeah, that's their throwaway. It's the new iPod Touch.
Yeah, and it disappoints me because of all of the iPad products, that one I was really attached to for a couple of years.
Well, I'm still interested. In fact, I think I may run out and get a Mini 4. I'm probably going to sell my current iPad and get the Mini 4, only because I really wanted the touch feature, and I want a Mini. I want something smaller to take.
What's the weight on it now? Have they, like, how heavy is it?
0.6 pounds, I think. It's like slightly over half a pound.
Yeah.
I love that.
But I do wish that they would bring it and have. Well, it is now. It's exactly like the current iPad Air 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is in line with the current iPad.
And is there not going to be an iPad Air update this year then?
No.
No. This is the first year that they've ever not had a new generation, and it's because they're pushing the iPad Pro. They want all the focus to be on that.
I'll be honest with you. I think the iPad Pro is going to be, by Apple standards, that's a big caveat, I think it's going to be a flop.
Really?
Yep.
Well, Apple standards as in bazillion sold?
No, it's not going to be bazillion sold. It's not even going to be a
flop that Samsung could wish for. Is that
what it'll be a single-digit million sold, not double-digit million sold next year.
I don't know. My dad is 67 years old. He's been on an iPad for a couple of years, and he called me yesterday about getting one of these.
But you gotta admit, Rick, you're not the average consumer, though, right?
Oh no, I'm insane.
First of all, you're a very, very heavily invested iPad user, and second of all, the average person just can't afford the thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know though, man. I think with the enterprise aspect of it, because they made it clear they were working with IBM,
right.
And you got Microsoft out there doing these demos. They're wanting to get into that market, obviously, because they see what the Surface has been doing the last couple of years. But I don't know. I think it's got potential. I think the 10-inch, the 10-inch iPad may end up going the route of the iPad Mini in the next couple of years. I don't know.
Oh, I hope not.
That's the sweet spot.
Crazy.
I wouldn't predict that the iPad Pro will be the top-selling iPad this year, and I don't think that they do either. I mean, they're aiming toward business and they're aiming toward artists for right now, and you can see some other applications later.
And for me, this is the equivalent of the new MacBook, which is the equivalent of the first generation MacBook Air.
Yeah.
It is a product test case that they put a lot of money into, and they're going to recoup a significant amount of that development cost in the first year where everybody gets the beta. I mean, this is Apple's shtick. This is what they do.
That's a great analogy. That's exactly what they're doing.
But I think they depend on developers to help move the platform, obviously, to help move that product.
And that's what they're doing.
And I think in a year or two, that thing, when you get guys getting a hold of those apps with that multitasking and that beautiful resolution, I mean, my selfies are just going to be, I'm going to be big pimping, I'm gonna be like, look at me.
Here's going to be my excitement next year at this
Okay.
time is if they say, all right, this year the iPad Air 3. We love what we did with the iPad Pro, and users think it's the greatest iPad ever. And so we decided to bring all that technology to the iPad Air 3.
Yeah, that's exactly
That's
what
what'll get me excited.
Yeah.
But an iPad Air, and I'll be honest with you, before the announcement, I was actually starting to look around my room. What can I sell to get this new iPad Air Pro, or iPad Pro? I was the guy who was like licking my chops wanting it. And then when I saw it, I thought, nah,
No, I'm gonna get it.
not
Like
good enough.
I see something.
Too expensive.
When I saw that new port, whatever, I don't know what they're calling that port, but I just can't wait to see what Logitech and these third-party guys are going to do with it because
It will be interesting.
it
Well,
is, man.
Logitech's already announced a keyboard, thankfully, because if you do want to buy the iPad, in my opinion, that keyboard that Apple's selling looks horrible.
Didn't they say it has Apple cloth or something like the textures?
Yeah, I don't.
Terrible.
My only thing is I don't like the action on the Mac keyboard,
Oh, me
the MacBook keyboard, which Rick actually likes. I'm wondering if the cloth gives it just a little bit of cushion so that I actually wouldn't hate it.
Well, that Logitech keyboard that they showed just a hair of it. Here, I'll show you. It's
Oh, it looks gorgeous.
pulled up here. It looks like it'll be 10 times better. And of course, I like Logitech's products. I've used a lot of them, and this looks like a much nicer, much more touch typist friendly keyboard than.
It's indented into the body though. Do you see that?
Yeah, it's
That's-
recessed, and they do that with some of their other keyboards. My only concern about that, after thinking about it, is that then I'm almost carrying a laptop again. The advantage of that fold-over cover keyboard is you still have just this nice little folio thin notepad thing that you're carrying with you.
Yeah.
Well, if you've used a Logitech keyboard, it'll probably be similar.
That's what I'm doing. I mean, with Josh's Surface, my son's Surface, all I do is rip the thing off and toss the keyboard away. So it's like, that doesn't bother me as much.
I hope I'm wrong. This thing feels like a lot of these cheap staples, or looks to me, not feels, I haven't seen it or felt it. It looks, just from what you saw on screen, like a lot of these cheap rubbery keyboards that you can find at Staples and Best Buy and stuff like that.
Kevin,
I hope I'm wrong about that, but that's what it looks like to me, and that's why my first initial reaction was, ugh.
Hey Kevin, do you guys keep up with John Gruber on Twitter? He's a journalist and
Yeah, he's kind of pompous, yeah.
sort of. Yeah, he is. He is. I think he's a West Coast guy. No offense to the West Coast, but he had He put something on Twitter yesterday about the keyboard, and he's a little meh about the product, but he sees a potential with it that compared to the competitors, they're thinking it's going to be better. And I read some reviews yesterday. I think The Verge posted something. A few people posted some quick things, and it wasn't all bad. What I was reading, I'm not that picky about it. Like now in my studio, I'm using my old dual G4 keyboard, because I know where everything is on it,
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm out and about, I'm not really crazy picky about it. I just don't write a lot,
I am a keyboard snob, so that's affecting, coloring my feel about it. And the best keyboards on technology today are Lenovo's, in my opinion. So it's hard to find a keyboard that is that good, that has that good a feel to it. I'm not talking about the cheap, junky Lenovo. I'm talking about the ThinkPad, the high-end business.
Yeah, I guess
keyboard.
it's so funny. Like keyboard snobs are like, they're snobs. Like I'm a keyboard snob. Like I will put my fingers on a thing, and I will hate it or love it, and almost in an instant.
I'm reviewing a product right now, an Acer laptop that it has a Core i5 processor. It's got 16 gigs or 8 gigs of RAM. It's got an NVIDIA dedicated graphics card, 1080p screen on it. It's a nice 15.6-inch laptop, which that's not my favorite, but for people who like larger, I see the value of it. It's got the dedicated number pad, but it's got a bad keyboard and a bad touchpad, and I hate using that computer.
Oh, bad touchpad.
The keyboard and the touchpad, if they had made a really nice keyboard and a really nice touchpad, I would love that computer. but it's just that one detail, and I hate it. And so it's unfair for me to, because I'm a keyboard snob. That's the two things that are most important to me on a computer or any device is the keyboard and the display, because those are the things you use the most, that you interact with.
Well, in defense of the MacBook keyboard, which is what I'm on the MacBook right now talking to all of you, which is why my video image isn't as good as yours. In defense of the MacBook keyboard, I'm actually faster on this keyboard now, but that took some time, and any keyboard you have to use for a while for it to become muscle memory. But what I realized was, the first week or two that I used this keyboard, my fingers hurt at the end of the day if it was a heavy writing day.
That's what I can't stand about it.
But here's the thing. What I realized was I'm treating it like a traditional keyboard. I mean, I can remember years ago people who learned how to type on manual typewriters. They would hit keyboard so hard. Well, it was the same thing here. I was hitting this keyboard too hard. So when I trained myself to lighten the touch, and now I don't even think about it, I'm actually much faster on this.
Well,
that may translate to the iPad Pro.
Yeah, when I'm thinking with the iPad Pro, that little cloth might keep my fingers from being in pain at the end of the day.
Let's wrap this up and bring it home a little bit to what we are here at Theotek, and that is about church and Bible technology. And one of the things I can say about the iPad Pro is it will make doing digital Bible study and sermon preparation a lot easier as app makers, especially as app makers take advantage of some of the things, if they ever do. But just as they are right now, having your word processor here and your iPad or your Bible app here, or the ones that have good note features, having it open with the notes along one side like that, that's going to be a real plus. I could see that as a valuable thing. And, of course, that technology is going to come down to the iPad Air 2. It works a little bit on the iPad Air, but it's only in certain apps, and that's because the processor is not good enough to handle it. And so the iPad Air 2 will use that. If you've got one already, you can take advantage of that. And so that's a positive. And then for, you talked about the Apple TV. If it brings better mirroring, which I think that's a huge if. You said I assume it's going to be so. I don't assume that at all. I think just
3 generations of processor ahead, and it's got AC Wi-Fi. So I'm assuming.
Yeah, but I don't know. The mirroring, in my opinion, the mirroring on the current Apple TV is pretty unreliable. I used to try to use it a lot for church. I don't bother anymore. No. It's so unreliable now.
Yep.
And crazy thing about it, I use my Surface Pro 3, which has WiDi built into it, wireless display, and I use a dongle that I bought, and that is 10 times more reliable. Apple's just work, well, not with this feature. So if it is better, that's a big if, it might be worth the extra $50 just to get reliable wireless display in a room if you're really into the Mac features. Anybody else? Can you see any real positives or negatives to church and Bible technology users?
Well, yeah, I can remember when the iPad first came out, and people who were detractors of it said, well, it's just a big iPhone. But what was unfair about that statement, and you didn't really understand it until you used one, and this again applies to any tablet, not just iPads, but that with the screen larger, there's more that you can do on it. There are things that I would choose an iPad over an iPhone even today, even though I've got the iPhone 6 Plus. There's still things that are just easier to do on an iPad than the iPhone. And so I'm thinking in terms of Bible software, not just because I've worked for a company that makes Bible software, because I've been using Bible software for over 25 years now. The average, I'll use Accordance as an example. You can put 2 panes there. You can have like a Bible text and another Bible text, or a Bible text and a commentary, but you're limited to 2. And what I've asked for a long time is I'd like to see at least 4 quadrants there. And part of it's processor, part of it is space, and I think that larger screen will allow for that, and not only allow for that, but just like you suggested, Kevin, to have your Bible software on one side, have Word or Evernote or Pages or whatever on the other side, working on your sermon in that, and having those two aspects side by side. Much easier to take something like an iPad Pro to a coffee shop than your whole laptop and have to worry about having it plugged in because you don't have enough power and all of that. So I think that once these devices get into developers' hands, you're going to see things done with the software. I don't think it's just going to be a mirror of what's on the smaller iPads. I think that you're going to be able to do more things with that larger screen and with a greater processor.
Yeah, eventually.
I was going to say, let me say, if you're interested in, we're going to have to jump off here. If you're interested in taking your iPad Air 2 and giving it sort of iPad Pro qualities, you know, that you probably can kind of guess how to do that, but I've got an article over at Gotta Be Mobile where I wrote essentially that about a year ago, not quite a year ago, only what I said was how to turn it into a Surface Pro 3. But, you know, it's basically getting a real nice keyboard, and I gave some recommendations of keyboards, and then using a really nice stylus, which I gave some recommendations for using some great stylus, and then the apps that make it possible, the Microsoft Office apps. And so, you know, kind of a shameless self-promotion there. Let me mention that to you. It's an old thing, and we've recently gone through a change in how we display graphics, so some of the graphics don't show up the way they should. But so go check that out. Go over to gottabemobile.com and search for how to turn your iPad Air 2 into a Surface Pro 3, and you can read all about it. But we're going to have to end this and call it quits. Ricky, we really appreciate you, especially at the last minute here, jumping on with us. I think you added an awful lot with your knowledge of Apple products and your interest in it. And so we really appreciate you coming and sharing with us. You got something you want to promote or let people know about?
No, you could just check out my my studio website. It's bombhouserecording.com here in lovely Western North Carolina, and you can find me on Twitter at Ricky Rodriguez. If you want to talk Apple, video games, or music, I'm your guy. So,
Are those CDs ones that you produced?
Yeah. I'll work on over 100 songs this year.
Ooh.
That's about, I mix.
Tell them a very recent
Artist
person sort of shooting up the track that you've worked with.
If anybody's watching AGT, America's Got Talent, there's a singer on that show called Benton Blunt. He's sort of a bald-headed guy with a beard. He is one of my artists. I've produced his last few records.
Cool.
So, and he's had some success over the years, but now he made the top 10, the final on AGT, so he's doing great. Yeah. But that's one of my clients.
I've been to Ricky's studio, and so if you live anywhere near Western North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee, you should come and record with him. He does a great job. He has a real great ear for what he's doing, and just particularly talented. And so while he's humble, I'm not going to be humble on his behalf, because I think it's amazing that we have a guy like Ricky in the sleepy little town of Morganton. So he does a great job, and I really appreciate it. One of the boys in my church recorded with you. Do you remember Caleb Stamey?
Yeah, absolutely.
Recorded him. Very talented kid. For some reason, just hasn't gone forward with what he could be doing. But anyway, Ricky recorded him and made him sound great. I heard some of those recordings. All right, guys. Well, Rick, anything you want to share here at the end?
No, I think I'm tapped out.
All right, Wes?
I'm done. Thank you.
All right. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and as always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or subscribe to us on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. And if you don't use Stitcher Radio, never heard of it, it's probably the thing that allows you to listen, if you're listening to this podcast, on things other than an iPhone. Although actually many of the podcasting apps use Stitcher Radio as their source for material, so go ahead and check us out there. We're at theotek.com or kevinpurcell.org. Appreciate you watching, and we are done. Thanks, guys.
Peace.
Yeah.